Oh, I never supposed to be. And 2.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Wait,
Because
Liam.
I'm your flight 2.
Oh, you are?
And you
Cool. I'm trying to record flight 2 this round too.
I'll just like let it go.
Just shut the door. Just let it go.
Hi.
Thanks, Liam.
How many shells are
What's this be?
8 by 1?
8 by 4. It's all like fancy texture. In general, or just
Alright. I'm ready whenever everybody else is.
Give me a sec.
Alright.
If this round is being recorded, can I just, well, I guess it depends on how soon this link's posted, but I'd like to record it too, if that's alright.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Alright.
I feel like I can't flow, so to like slow down recording, just figure out what we're saying. Yeah, they're good. Akil's actually sampling all of this into his mixtape. Just little fragments of you. Call it a bowling card gangster. These are reasons. Dirty Joel. Call the what is that called? Swag buddy mixtape or something.
That's dumb, whatever it was. Alright.
Do you have a flashlight?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Do I? Yeah, I do. I think I should. It just happened. Round 5 college prep. One second.
Sorry, what was it called?
Round 5 college prep.
Okay. Is it in the debate folder?
No, it should be in the main folder. Yeah, dependency. Can I get it back because I didn't save it on my
Okay.
computer.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
One second, sorry.
Sorry.
Alright, you have it, right? Can you open it? You.
No, I can't.
Alright, sorry. That's strange. I want to load. Yeah, it starts with dependence AC.
Okay. Okay.
Everybody ready?
Yep.
Ready?
Just 1 second, sorry. Okay. Okay.
Alright, everybody good?
Yeah.
The Apple will accept net preferences on specificity and implementation context as long as they don't require me to abandon my maxim, because my position only depends on the maxim. First, in the term A, there's no abuse. I'll defend whatever he thinks is most fair. Education will be prevents neg from mutually exclusive frivolous T in terms that detract from C doesn't justify infinite abuse. That's limited to the two areas where the app and neg disagree on in terms of the abuse aversion allow the app to accept triggers, and D, the neg knows the app will accept their in terms of the AC before they start preference, so there's no CO. And if I lose a G debate, reevaluate my offense under their interpret that prevents AC conclusion, offense, neg adaptability, and NC, and compensates with the fact that I speak in the dark. I value morality's auto-applies and moral obligation. All moral claims must be based on the principle of practical reason. First, only practical reason avoids integration. Looking at external authority allows the question why we ought to act upon the dictates of that authority. Practical reason only matter to not bet the question, since asking why we should act on reason concedes the authority basing our action on the reason. Second, individuals must rationally impose normative principles on themselves when their actions are governed by desires and emotions. The person not actually willing at all but allowing herself to be influenced by the laws of nature and deterministic system. Thus, any ethical system must uphold agents out of freedom by preventing the form of their choice from being hindered. Otherwise, morality cannot assign praise or blame to action state but just by performing any action. Third, any action provided and influence further action. For example, when I drink a glass of water, I have to get a pickle glass, etc. Only reason can unify the phase of action because action necessary consists of the fact that agent rationally intend to take the action, where desires can never use by action because they represent changeable states. Instead, states select for a reason they are bound by the same obligations as all other rational agents. Containing the form of reasoning is that the individuals must pursue compatible ends because otherwise individuals decide to do A and not A, but that's no decision. All willing compatible ends requires willing consistently with your own freedom, which is your independence from the choice of others. Logically incoherent will a hindrance of your own freedom. This because in willing any end you hold yourself to be capable of bringing about the end, so necessarily will they be able to pursue it free from other choice. Any maxim that subjects one person to someone else's choice is internally contradictory, thus inconsistent with the form of practical reasoning. And any objective moral theory must be binding, as non-binding theories will lead to inconsistent application of moral norms. Agency, i.e. the place where we decide which end to pursue, is the only necessary feature of an action. First, agency is the locus where individuals deliberate about which action to engage in moving between, so it serves as a prerequisite for any other possible constituent feature. Second, agency is the only enterprise that gives close under reflection because we have to employ agency in order to judge the merits of agency, whereas we can judge other practices from an external standpoint. Thus, ethical theories grounded on factors contingent agents being rational rulers like our desires, state affairs fail to generate binding principles. Set theories rest on principles that can change, or the agents could rationally judge it incorrect. Only principles that derive from the rational world necessary, thus binding on agents in general. Thus, individuals with agents must be free to pursue their own ends free from others' will. However, agents willing any end are committed to building a system of equal and outer freedom without state arbitration. Individual agents are incapable of securing the means to their ends because the empirical world can frustrate those means, and agents within the world can will and counter to the one who has will. So the will to exist independent of system out of freedom is contradiction of will, because in willing any end you commit yourself to necessary means. So then only under a system of equal and outer freedom can an agent know that they have the necessary means to secure their ends. So no individual contains the will of all. It's the duty of the state to maintain a system of reciprocal constraints that realize the freedom of all. Translate internally to any other framework. Every moral theory presumes that agents are some end, but that claim requires a system of equal freedom in the first place. Thus, standards maintaining a system of equal freedom. And there's intention force that distinction. First, since intention the act of will only a contradiction inherent in the intention generate contradiction with necessary and the will consequence of action or mindset of the act not part of what the state wills, and the act doesn't need to take these to justify the course of action anytime to take the action. So foreseen effects are always outweighed by what is inherent to willing action. Second, to account for all foreseen impacts but preclude individuals from being morally culpable for the actions because external factors not based on the will could by chance lead to violation of outer freedom. Thus, the act intends that a just government ought to mandate a living wage be consistent with the system of equal freedom. First, poverty creates a system of dependency requiring government intervention. Davies. Relation to dependence cannot be upheld or right condition has to be subject to the choice of another, excludes the possibility of being your own master without the appropriate institutional arrangement. The student society will be dependent on the beneficence of those who are better off. However, the form of this dependence as non-contractual and thus non-enforceable means that the poor are subject to the choice of the rich. Connoisseurs that the rich should be taxed in order to provide, And living wage intends to lift workers out of poverty, thus ensures that a system of equal freedom is preserved, and proving that the living wage increases poverty or unemployment is not sufficient to gain understanding because only a foreseen consequence, not effect inherent to living wage. And because the impoverished are dependent on the arbitrary will of their employers' status quo, implementing a living wage does not violate property rights. Rifstein 2. Poverty poses a factor for grammar. Poverty poses a problem for general will because it's supposed to make the enforcement of poverty rights consistent with the freedom of all persons can enforce property rights because those rights enable them to exercise freedom, yet they cannot authorize rights if that made some subject to the discretion of others because such powers be inconsistent with the freedom of those dependent without an institutional solution. Those in power need not regard themselves as authorizing general will to all, as a result, property rights would be a unilateral power exercised by strong against the weak. Second, the current economic system allows for employers to exploit workers, necessitating a living wage. Lot. People do not compensate others at higher level because that means they will have to pay more, even though such terms would not require the employers to sacrifice their own means of living well. The situation case of exploitation and additional benefits of well-off, which is not necessary for decent life, being allowed to trump the claims of need by workers whose flourishing is being seriously compromised. Since the employers press for these terms to gain from workers' efforts, the employers exploit the workers. If I'm an employer who forces my workers to accept such exploitative terms, then I'm frustrating their activity as rational, self-directing agents. Their own purpose to secure their good for themselves, not determining what they must do, but my purpose that I be benefited determining what they must do. I'm bending their activity to my will against their own interest. To treat others this way is deny them proper standing as free and equal rational beings. The pure contract view is wrong. Human economy sets limits corresponding to a living wage. Living wage prevents a system of exploitation because employers are forced to pay a salary that allows workers to flourish and direct their means for their own purposes. It also means counterplans like EITC don't solve because they still allow employers to exploit workers for their own purposes. Only a foreseen consequence that individuals have the means to pursue their own ends. Underview. First, presume after a reasonable afterterms overcome 6% neg bias and sample size of 32,000 rounds. Second, the negatives accept the after choice of paradigm. Their first roll the ballot, i.e. post-fiat AFC comparison. AFC prevents the neg from moving 6 minutes of AC options by reading alternative roll the ballot changing paradigms into a temporal grounds because the neg has 13 minutes justify the roll the ballot while the AF only has 7 minutes and 1 AR and 2 AR. Guaranteed fairness in terms of access to arguments and switch side debate. Solves and links all your often changing paradigms are also debated in the question which paradigm is better rather than focusing on the clash between topical arguments that function on a particular paradigm. Third, if the neg reads an alternative framework or recontextualizes the AF framework and links often so they may not read turns to the AF intention. Conversely, if the neg reads turns to the AF intention, they may not read an alternative framework or recontextualize the AF framework. Key to abstract in time because it prevents the neg from reading multiple conclusive layers and forces debate one layer with the AF can weigh in front line. Turns education because no critical thinking occurs when the neg suggests extend multiple conclusive layers to win the round. Also, no educational laws. A, in different rounds debate will focus on the framework contention layers, so no total loss of framework topic debate. B, allows for more in-depth argumentation on a particular area of the flow, and time speed comes first. A, it's the only objective measure in the round. B, making arguments presuppose the time-making arguments, and without sufficient time, I would always lose. Third, the neg must concede that if I win theory that they violate. Fourth, the neg must concede that if I win theory that they violate, then you drop the debate for them. A, the time crunch 20 hours is insufficient to win both theory and substance, so F has no ability to check it, please lead infinite harm. B, the 2 hour can lapse on after theory, making it impossible for the F to cover all hours in 2 hours if they split their time between substance theory. This to me, neg also concede they don't get RBS. A, would be impossible to check NC abuse because 6-minute NR can go all in on theory, disincentivizing 1 hour theory, and B, no abuse of 6-minute NR is ample time to win both theory and substance, impossible for the F to overwhelm the neg. Fourth, the fault of reasonability on T. A, the neg can be mutually exclusive in terms no matter what's right in the AC. B, competing in terms support force debate or perfect in terms, which is impossible.
Alright. What did you not read? Everything, yeah. Okay. Sweet. Yeah, ready?
Yeah.
Alright. Why doesn't the neg get an RVI?
So for the first argument is it would be impossible to check NC abuse because you could go all in on theory, disincentivizing 1 hour theory, right? You have 6 minutes to respond to 4 minutes of AF theory, so you'd always win. So the 1 hour would never initiate theory.
That's fine. What constitutes as like your choice of paradigm, right? So here it says roll the ballot. In the 1AR, if I like read a theory shell in the 1N, are you just going to be like, are you going to make new paradigmatic arguments?
Like, what does that mean?
Okay, so if I read,
What do you entail? I'm confused.
like, do you get to pick the paradigm on theory too?
No,
Like,
this
so-
is specifically talking about like.
So like if I
post-fiat
read a theory shell in the 1AR, are you going to stand up and be like APC, so reasonability, your theory shell goes away?
No.
No.
No,
So,
this is specifically talking about like you have to read a post-fiat advocacy.
okay, so you can't use the 2 spike in any other way.
No.
So only to take out case.
And
Or-
like pre-fiat stuff or like narratives or micropole stuff
Okay,
like that.
that's fine. All right, what's the argument about why we can hinder hindrances to freedom? Where in like the large massive analytics is it?
All right, so that's coming from right above the standard, right? So that says we have to will a system of equal and outer freedom. So because each of us have different like ends that we pursue, right? So the state has to hinder hindrances to freedom so to make sure that people's ends are compatible.
Okay, so where's the argument about why it's a contradiction in the will?
For what?
The framework argument about contradictions in the will.
All right, that is under the practical reason arguments.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Which one's the contention argument? That's why not doing living wage is kind of contradiction in the will.
It was never explicitly worded as contradiction of the will, right? All the contention arguments talk about why it's inconsistent with a system of equal and outer freedom, which I guess means that it's a contradiction of the will.
Okay, that's fine. How do we weigh under the AC?
You can weigh between things like perfect duties versus imperfect duties.
So, like, what comes first? Perfect duties, like severity of a freedom violation, contradictions in the will. Like,
What does
which of those?
severity of a freedom violation mean?
Okay, what would come first? Like, violation of a perfect duty or a contradiction in the will?
Like the AC frames that a contradiction in the will would also be a violation of a perfect duty.
Okay, right. And then do perfect duties outweigh imperfect duties under the F, or you don't do that analysis in the AC?
I don't make that analysis in the AC.
Okay. Why is it key to abstract so like I can't turn the AC if I read an alternate framework?
Like what was the question?
Why is it key to abstract?
Because it forces debate to one layer where I can weigh one.
Okay. All right. I'll start there.
Otherwise, you can read multiple layers, and I'd always be spread out.
Okay. Wait, so are there arguments about why the neg doesn't get RBS?
Yes.
Where are those?
That's the number 4 spike.
The
It's
four-
misnumbered. I'm sorry. It's supposed to be 1, 2, 3. Then it goes 3, 4, but it's supposed to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's
Wait.
my accident.
Here it says fourth default reasonability on T. Third, neg must concede that if I win theory, they violate.
Yeah, it's right here.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, 8 seconds.
Are you reading off your computer?
Yeah.
Alright. Can you flash?
Yeah. Sorry, let me put it all on one doc.
Alright.
Screen open. Alright. I'm probably not gonna read all of it, so I'll just let you know after.
Alright.
Wait, are you still using Prep?
No. Did you want me to?
Yeah, that would be ideal.
Oh, sorry.
Or just let him read over your shoulder and we can see him.
Alright, whatever.
Do you want to read over my shoulder?
Yeah, I guess so.
debate rounds just take like 15 minutes longer now.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. Okay, I don't know how, but Siri just went off on my phone and heard, "I'm sorry to be around. Just take like 15 minutes longer now."
Ready?
Yeah. What's the rep now?
NC off AC. There might be another off after AC. Ready?
Yeah.
The negative advocacy is that the actor repeals the minimum wage. Solvency advocacy available on the press. First, lock. If men in state nature is free, wildly subject to self-dominion institution, obviously stands to the rights of state nature very uncertain through their constant post tax to others, and teach human join society for the mutual preservation of their property, because humans hope to secure their property by establishing government. They will not want that government to destroy the object they sought to attain. In the state nature, we have no rights because might makes right. Thus, governments reform in order to reconcile these competing desires. I contend the living wage is violation of property rights. Contention 1. Living wages violate the property rights of employers and the employed. A minimum or living wage restricts the ends to which individuals, both employers and employees, can choose to pursue. Johnny 13. 110. Libertarianism is voluntarism, but it says that parties should be free to contract without permission from third party. When third party prohibits contractual agreement, that does not concern the party, and they are initiating force against the participants. The law says that it's illegal for us to accept certain jobs, subsequently confers punishments if individuals consent to voluntary transaction. This is immoral. The 8th point is that 1, it would tell people how to dispose their property, which includes their labor. If I want to work for a certain amount for reasons such as altruism or maintain my desirability as a worker, I will be forced to charge more for my labor, so this violates the property rights of the employee. B point is that my argument is not that it's morally permissible to pay below living wages, that it's a respective right. There are no grounds to legislate to require minimum wage to be paid. It is more immoral not to give charity, but that doesn't mean I can steal 20% of your income and donate for you. Cannot subject another's means even to good ends. Just as slavery is no less repugnant if one of your slaves is set to humanitarian projects. C point is that if my value as a minimum wage earner is close to the score minimum wage, then increasing the minimum wage will disincentivize workers to hire me because that would be costing them money. That's a worse violation of the dependency arguments in the advocacy. Says that we're going to be put in a state of dependence when we are not paid a living wage. My argument is that we will literally not have any jobs at all, which is much worse comparatively to the dependent stuff in the AC. Then the D point is that a second irrespective of the particular concerns of the living wage, a generic wage legislation violates individuals' independence by subjecting them to another's will. Slave is no less a slave if they have a kindly master who lets them choose how they spend their time. The master can revoke their privileges they see fit, even if a living wage is not a problem to enable. Wage legislation thus places one and the same relation on a dependency vis-a-vis state power. Then off. Prefer the libertarian framework over the AF claims of equal freedom. First, equal freedom does not create an obligation to adopt any particular social policy. It merely establishes general parameters on what sort of action is good. The particular choices must still be subject to the general will. Ripstein. The content argument is formal rather than substantive. It does not specify the level of social provision nor detailed analysis of the nature of wrongful dependence, whether, for example, inequalities of bargaining power between employers and workers could qualify. The argument requires actual institutions to set levels and mechanisms of aid. Is not supposed to micromanage social policy within the appropriate structure. The answers must be imposed by the people themselves. Then, this operates as terminal defense, generates a net benefit to the negative. Then, second is that Ripstein claim right or not a blanket entitlement for any action, but only a legitimate entry. Even if the app is right, it would be wrong for me rather than the state's force people to pay a living wage. Because, however, the NC demonstrates the state is no more legitimate than an individual enacted course of redistributed policy. Because the state is simply relying on the course of power of majority, in which the minority has the legislative equality. As my vote will not actually change policy, that means that I have no more control over the laws as if I had no legislative power at all. Then Anscombe. Kant introduces the idea of legislating for oneself, which is absurd. Majority votes command great respect, because each reflected decision is resulting in a majority, which as a matter of proportion is overwhelming, for it is always 1 to 0. The concept of legislation requires superior power in the legislature. Thus, a powerful state is no different than a slave with a benevolent master. We are still truly not free unless we are liberated from coercive state policy. This means that you always prefer the NC because it's better on the issue of equal freedom. Then to the app. First, raising the minimum wage would just hurt. Sorry, skip that one. First, living wages don't help poor families or give them extra income because they strip away assistance from social programs. Toyka. Advocates of living wage claim that the wage mandates will help families escape poverty. However, many families living with earnings below the poverty level take advantage of programs specifically designed to help them out of the poverty system, like food stamps, camps, Section 8, housing, and the EITC. A living wage appears to be badly targeted and ineffective at raising comprehensive disposable income. We find that phase-out rates of benefit programs are structured so that additional earnings from living wages largely disappear through benefit reduction and increased taxation. Such vanishing benefits reduce the ability of living wage laws to reduce poverty. The problem that he's going to say, one, this argument doesn't link because it's a huge impact. I would say, one, the intention foresight analysis of the AC it doesn't make any sense because it says that we can exclude specific impacts based on how they are not part of the intent of the will. But one, it's arbitrary to constitute what is part of the will. You can never understand what the will of the government is as entity, multiple different agencies. So you should take end states that would make sense under the AC, because if something leads to poverty, it's obviously not going to be good for the dependence. The two arguments that even if you buy that, it's still you have to talk about what is a contradiction of the will or what's a part of the will itself. I would say the living wage is definitely part of the will of living wage will lead to these poverty impacts. That means it still turns the app. Then block. First, economists overwhelmingly conclude that raising the minimum wage would increase unemployment. Block. Majority of you conclude that this law will boost unemployment for those with low productivity and will only raise wages then temporarily until employers can substitute away for the factor of production, unskilled labor now priced out of the market. The praxeological view is that the minimum wage law will raise unemployment higher than it would otherwise be in the absence of this law. Other things equal, provided that is only set above the level of productivity or at least one worker. This is an abdict to claim, not subject to refutation, falsification, or testing. This claim is necessarily true and yields knowledge about real-world effects. For this evidence, A, it isn't riddled with alternate causation like empirical examples, provides logically coherent economic logic. B is the praxeological view, which means that it's proven by the study of purposely human action. B, C, D language is unequivocal. Then for this evidence is a turn to the AC because it outweighs on the dependency level as well. Because remember, it doesn't matter if we're dependent; it's going to be way worse if we're going to be unemployed. That's the worst form of dependency. That's going to be a damning turn to the AC. But then go to the F. So first, the arguments in the offense are not going to be specific to the analytics that he makes about the intention force. That distinction is not going to be making any sense because none of the authors know about the will of what the government is going to be doing. That means you cannot constitute what the will of the government is. Means that you cannot tell what a contradiction of will. That's an overview of problems in the app. Means you can't evaluate offense because his the way that he filters offense doesn't make any sense. Then go to the underview. First, on the 3, A is the counter-interpretation that I can read a framework and returns. B is a violation I meet C standards 1 clash. First, we can have a good debate because how debate works is that you come in and you prep more on the side that you're debating. For example, if I read a libertarianism and see I'm going to be really prepped on libertarianism debate. If he reads a contact, he's going to be prepped on that debate as well. So the way we can have a good clash, have a good debate with good clashes if we can engage on both sides. It means a clash to key fairness determines how we generate arguments. Clash to key education determines how we're going to be learning anything from debate. Then the ground standards that I need to be able to have layering. For example, you could just read an app that has a really narrow standard with no turnaround and tricks, and I need to be able to have a layering in that situation. Then give me an RBI because 1 time skew, it's a horrible time skew me trade-off. I have to spend time on this counter-interpretation. 2 is that education is going to be a horrible impact to education if you're going to be letting him get away with these spikes, and I don't have access to learning anything about the activity. And 3 argument is the norm-setting argument that it's the only way we can stop him from reading this abuse position. Then his argument on no-neg RBIs 1, he says you could go on the 8.1, you could go 2 minutes on the theory, or 4 minutes on theory, and the 3 minutes in the 2AR means it's not going to be a time, so you can go 7 minutes to my 6 minutes. The second argument is that it's not ample time. That doesn't make any sense because the NR still has to collapse a certain issue. So I have to go. NR still has to cover multiple issues. So I can't just collapse the theory. I usually have to go for substance too, and it's not sufficient enough time for me to go to theory and substance. That's why in most rounds in LD debate right now, if you watch a video, then the NR usually collapses to two issues rather than all the issues in the round. Means I still have to collapse. So give me an RBI.
Your 2 arguments on the theory are clash and ground, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Then let's go to your all right, why is norm setting true? What's the why we the judge why has to endorse a theoretical interpretation?
Well, I'm saying that we can endorse better norms for the community if we talk about.
Why does the judge care about norm setting? Where's that argument?
The argument about why the judge cares about norm setting?
Yeah.
I think the argument is just implicit to the fact that debaters care about how rounds go. Yeah.
All right. Then let's go to the NC. Okay. Let's talk about your Ripstein card on the NC, right? Ripstein in Force and Freedom says, why is it that what we implement why does that have to be subject to the general will? What's the warrant in Ripstein?
So he says that inequalities of bargaining power between employees and worker requires actual institutions to set levels and mechanisms of aid. It is not supposed to micromanage social policy. That's what Ripstein says.
Why does that take out the AC? Right?
Because micromanaging social policy is what the act does. It lets the government regulate what the private sector does.
It says the argument requires actual institutions to set levels and mechanisms of aid, right?
Right. So
wouldn't a living wage just be a
So I think that what Ripstein is referring to when he says levels and mechanisms of aid are basic regulations, right? Like no child labor. Like you can set how many hours a week an individual can work. It's not referring to micromanaging social policy.
Why is the living wage any different?
Because living wage is reallocating funds from the private sector and forcing the reallocation of those funds.
Yeah, why is that different from something as restricting child labor?
Like you could weigh, right? Like restricting child labor and reallocating funds. One of those is probably a worse.
All right, what's the warrant in Ripstein though?
I mean, it's what Ripstein says. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, I understand.
warrant?
That's what. Yeah, I'm asking for the warrant.
Okay, the warrant talks about how inequalities in bargaining power in employers and employers
Yeah, I know
and
what the
workers.
card says. I want the warrant.
Yeah, the warrant talks about how the relationship between the two can be regulated, and we can have mechanisms that lead to some sort of regulation. But allowing them to micromanage social policy is not the appropriate structure of the state that
Yeah,
Ripstein
why is
sets
it
up.
not the appropriate structure of the state?
Because it allows for the state to have too much power.
Why? Why? No, like.
Because it has too much power. Because it micromanages private policy, and like so they would be.
So it's an abuse of state power. Okay, that's the warrant, Ripstein. All right, then let's go to Anscombe. All right, what's that argument? Like the Anscombe argument.
So the Anscombe argument says that the NC demonstrate that the state is no more legitimate than an individual in enacting coercive redistributive policy because the state is simply reliant on the coercive power of the majority in which the minority has no legislative equality.
Okay, sure. Then let's go up to the framework. What's the warrant in Locke?
Locke says that the reason we leave the state nature is because we know our property rights will be protected, right? We wouldn't leave the state nature if our property rights
Alright.
were protected.
Sorry, bro. Okay, 56 is going to start at on the theory at the bottom of the AC, then NCAC. Everybody ready?
What did you say you're starting?
The number 3 spike at the bottom of the AC. Is everybody ready? Extend the interpretation of the negatives and alternative framework to recontextualize the affirmative links often to it they may not read turns to the affirmative tension. Conversely, if the negatives turns to the affirmative tension they may not read an alternative framework recontextualize the affirmative B is a violation he violates because he reads an alternative framework and reads turns to the affirmative reads turns to the affirmative when he talks about Then go to the standards. Extend the strategy student time standard is key to abstract time because it prevents the neg from reading multiple conclusive layers. Force the beta one there where the aff can weigh in front line outweighs your ground standard because on end status quo the affs have no possibility of winning the round because the neg just read multiple conclusive layers. Even if you need possibility of multiple conclusive layers, that just exacerbates the neg time. So there's no possibility for the aff winning. The only way the aff can win the aff can actually win rounds in good debates is if this policy is implemented. And on your clash then you can cross apply that this turns that you can extend my argument that this turns education because no critical thinking occurs when next and just extend multiple conclusive layers to win the round. You can read multiple framework conclusive layers and read multiple conclusive layers on the contentious level. You're just going to extend these arguments and there's actually not going to be any clash. You said this is how good debate this is how good debate works, but just because you can read cards doesn't mean we actually get education on the issue. The only way we get education is if we actually have clash on the issue that can only be in the AC world. He says this is key to, you say that this is key to fairness and this is how we make arguments, but you can make arguments under my interpretation. You can make arguments under my interpretation too. They just have to be on one layer on your ground standard first turn. It's better for your ground because it allows you to choose which layer of the flow to engage into. You're always going to have an advantage on that debate. Either you can go 7 minutes on framework or 7 minutes or 7 minutes on contentious level. You're always going to have enough ground in order to win the round. But you drop reasons why times Q come first and outweigh all of your other standards. Extend our A sub point, that's the only objective measure in the round, whereas ground is unquantifiable, so times Q is always going to be coming for ground. And you can extend the B sub point that making arguments presupposes the time to make arguments without sufficient time would always lose. And fairness comes before education. The constituent role of the judge determine who did the better debating, not who promoted the better education. Then and fairness is because the judge must determine the better debate. And you drop reasons why you dropped the debater, so you can extend the A sub point in the fourth spot. The time comes 20 hours, and it's sufficient to win both theory and substance, so the app has no ability to check abuse leading to infinite harm. Then go to your reasons why you get the RBI. In your first argument, times Q makes no sense. You spent 45 seconds on this argument. There's no reason why you should get the RBI. You didn't invest enough on this second argument. Turn this because RBI is kill education because the debate just collapsed theory. So that's always going to be net worse. Third norm setting. There's no reason why the judge cares about other rounds in the first place. The constituent role of the judge is to determine who did the better debating in this round. He doesn't care about outside rounds. Then go to my reasons. You can extend the A sub point that it'd be impossible to check NCBs because the 6-minute NR could go all in on theory, decentralizing 1AR theory. Just because current NRs don't do this doesn't mean it's not the most optimal strat. Also outweighs all of your views because it's impossible for the 1AC to check harm. So it's always going to be net worse. So you don't get the RBI. Then go to the NC on luck. First, the government is formed not just to have a state, is not just to secure property rights, ensure that people have a system of equal and out freedom. People have incompatible ends within the state of nature, so they form a government in order for the government to arbitrate these ends. Second, this is an empirical claim without an empirical warrant. You need an empirical example that governments actually do this for this reason. And the third, property rights can't be the actual basis for normativity because in the original acquisition of property, when the government actually allows you to have property, that's also taking away property from others, so it's always violating somebody's property. On your C sub point under the standard, you say that this incentivizes workers to hire me, but this is just a foreseen consequence. It doesn't link under the AC framework. You can extend the AC sub point that we can't be responsible for foreseen consequences of our action because there's always other effects that can always happen and change what actually happens. So we couldn't be morally culpable for them. He makes the argument on the AC that I don't actually understand what the government's will is, but yes, you do understand what the government's will is. The only thing that what the intent foresight distinction set up is that the government isn't responsible for actions that are not inherent in the passing of living wage itself. Means that your responses on the AC framework, your terms to the AC don't actually make sense. Then go to Ripstein. Living wage is not a micromanaging, it's only a special provision. That Ripstein contains no warrant on the Anscombe analysis. The Anscombe analysis ignores the fact the government was set up in order to secure people's ends. Then you can go to the AC law. You can extend the law down to analysis that there's exploitation of the status quo. Only the living wage law is met.
Alright, 8 seconds. Order's going to be the theory stuff, and then NC, and then I'll like signpost. extend the counter-interpretation. I need to be able to read a framework and returns to the AC. He doesn't do a good job in the clash standard. He makes a lot of weighing arguments. He concedes the clash standard. The clash standard is very good on this issue. He says that we can have a good debate on both sides, because what we do when we prep for a round is that we prep for our own cases. That means that we can quantify. We have the best debate. The clash argument is going to be very good on this issue. The clash argument says that, for example, if I read a libertarianism NC, I'm going to be really prepped on libertarianism debate. He reads a contact, he's going to be really prepped on the contact debate. And so if we have debates on both different frameworks, it means we're going to be having the best clash. It's most important for education. He says that fairness outweighs the education. And I dropped this weighing argument. Education is still a voter. This is the reason schools fund debate. And remember, you weigh on strength and link to voters. You don't just talk about one blanket voter. It's going to be the most important one in the round. I'm controlling a huge link to education because we learned about two different frameworks and how offense operates under them. That's the reason why you would vote for me. His answers to the RBI argument aren't very good. His answer to the two on deterrence isn't on the education argument is going to be not very good. He says that there's no reason why education matters, but I would say one, education is the reason schools fund debate. So that's the most important argument. The second argument is that the way that we can have education is not is even if we allow for the RBI to happen in this round, we have a longer theory debate in this round. When we get theory education, there's no unique weighing about why topical education is better than theory education. The two arguments that if we allow for RBI, then he will be deterred from reading this abuse theory position again. It means that there will be more education in the long run. So I'm again outweighing on a huge amount of strength linked to education. There's literally no arguments, even if fairness outweighs education in the vacuum. I have a lot of arguments to education. Then go to the fairness debate. On his on the argument on ground. First, he says that he cannot win any debates because apps always lose. I would say one, apps can win all the time. He can just read a lot of preamps in the AC like he did. That's going to be sufficient to combat the app time skew. Then the argument about why time skew comes first on the ground arguments. First, he concedes the ground argument that says that you can just read a narrow standard, and then I have literally no turn ground. He says that time skew comes first in the fairness debate. There's definitely embedded clash. The ground standard could also be rephrased as time skew argument is very similar. It says that if he reads a narrow standard, that means I have to spend a lot of time developing the framework debate if I can't read turns too, because one, it's a narrow standard, so I can't read turns. That means my only other option is the framework debate, so I have to read literally like a 5-minute framework. That's the only strat that I have. It's a horrible time skew for me and a bad time trade-off. I'm going to be way behind on the debate. Then the second argument is that one, the second reason it's a horrible time skew for me is because I have to read arguments about why the NC is going to be good in terms of only the NC framework. I can't read offense to the AC. That's going to be another horrible time skew. Means he's going to be always one leg ahead of me because he can read the narrow standard, exclude all my offense. It's a horrible time skew. Means I'm going to be ahead on the fairness debate. Then the clash is going to be outweighing the ground arguments he makes, because the only way that we can understand how or where the ground is going to be coming from, the only way we can ensure equitable ground and good debate in terms of having fair ground on both sides through the clash argument. The clash argument is going to be very good on this issue. Remember, it doesn't matter if he wins that fairness outweighs. The time skew argument is key to fairness, but I'm winning huge links to education. Education's still a voter. He says that fairness outweighs education, not that education isn't a voter. The clash arguments are going to be very good on this issue for why education is why education is unique to the negative interpretation. The reason that we are going to get good education is because we both talk about our sides, which we came into the round of prep. It means that we have good understandings of two different frameworks and how offense operates under both of those frameworks. And the second reason why education is going to be good is because you give me the RBI. That means the education reason to give me an RBI is very important, because it says that if I collapse to theory, that means we're going to have more long-term education. Then back to the RBI arguments on the one. He says that the time skew is literally only 45 seconds, but the theory spike in the app is literally only 20 seconds. Means it's a positive time trade-off for him. Means you give me an RBI because I have to spend extra time on this. Then on 3 argument, he says there's no reason why we should care about norms, but he drops he doesn't get the answer that I give him in CX, which is that we implicitly care about norms. We care about how the community works and how certain arguments are going to be impacting the community. If you didn't care about them, you wouldn't be doing debate in the first place. That means that we do care about norms. 3 key to reason why I get the RBI. Then go to substance debate. Extended lock evidence says man and state interest free, wildly subject to self-dominion institution. The obvious answer is that we have to have protection of property rights. It's going to be turning the app, because remember the negative conception of what property rights are going to be is coming first, because it contextualized how we enter the state in the first place. He doesn't do a good job on the responses to the app about how the app offense doesn't make any sense. He concedes 2 overview arguments. The first overview argument is that there's no evidence about what the will of the United States is. He says that I can understand the will, but he doesn't give a good response to how you cannot understand the will of what a government does. Governments comprise multiple individuals. You cannot simply understand it. Then he concedes the second overview argument, you can't evaluate the will in terms of a card. The cards that he reads aren't specific to this is what the government is going to be willing. That means you cannot arbitrarily exclude end state, which means that if I talk about, or if I win the argument about why the end states are going to be coming before its dependency stuff, that means you vote for me on the framework debate. But I'm winning the NC framework anyway. He concedes Locke, which says that property rights are the only reason we leave the state nature. So my conception of the state comes first, because my argument is that the way we understand the state and the way the state exists is when we protect property rights. If the state didn't protect property rights like the AF does, then we wouldn't have that state in the first place. That means you look to the NEC framework. So, extend the Johnny evidence that says it's a minimum or living wage restricts the ends to which individuals and employers can choose to pursue. The Johnny 13 evidence is good because it says that voluntarism and talks about parties should be free to contract with permission from third party. Then it's an overexertion of government power. If they're going to be doing this, that's going to be a horrible violation of the dependency or a horrible violation of the Ripstein framework. Then the C point is going to be very good on this issue. It says that my value as a minimum wage earner is close to the school minimum wage, and increasing the minimum wage will disincentivize workers to harm because that will be costing them money. This means that the unemployment trend is going to be the most damning piece of weighing on the dependency debate. Because remember, it doesn't matter if you are dependent on another individual, because this is the worst form of dependency. You literally don't have any job at all. It means that you are completely in the worst state of dependency. This could also be construed as part of the will of living wage, because you will that those individuals the individuals who work minimum wage jobs will lose that job. That means it's very, very problematic for the AC because it's the worst form of dependence. That is a conceded weighing argument. Then the Ripstein evidence is going to be a very good. He doesn't do a good job answering the Ripstein evidence. He says it's not micromanaging policy. That's the only response he has, but it definitely is, because it's overstep of government power. That comes out of the Johnny evidence, says that the government doesn't have jurisdiction in that area.
Alright. I have like 40 seconds left.
Yeah. 56.
56. Alright. Starting prep. You agree with competing interps, right?
Yeah.
Alright. Alright. Overview of the round theory.
Do you need to see this?
Huh?
Do you need to see this?
No. Alright, is everybody ready?
Yep.
He gets the RBS, substance becomes irrelevant. Whoever wins the theory debate wins the round. Problem is, he's not doing sufficient work on the theory debate. He also concedes competing interpretations. As long as I prove that my interpretation is net more beneficial than his, that's a clear reason why you should vote app. He also drop the debater. So let's extend drop the debater. That the ASA point that the time frame 20 hours insufficient win both theory and substance. So app is no ability to check abuse leading to infinite harm. Yeah. So whoever wins theory wins. So let's go to the theory debate. On my interpretation. Extend the interpretation that if the neg reads an alternative frame, recontextualize the app frame links off into it, they may not return to the app potential. Conversely, if the neg returns to the app potential, they may not read an alternative frame, recontextualize the app framework. You can extend the B sub point, which is the violation that he both reads an alternative frame, returns to the app framework. Then goes standards. You can extend my first standard, which is Stratton times standard, that it prevents neg from reading multiple cursive layers, force debate one layer with the app way in front line. Otherwise, it's forced to split their time in the 1 hour. It's impossible for me to win. It's impossible for me to win the round because I have to allocate time on both substance and framework layers, and I'm always gonna be losing to because the neg has so much time advantage. Then go to reasons why time Q comes first. You can extend the A sub point. That's the only objective measure in the round, and B sub point that making arguments presupposes time make arguments. So without sufficient time, I always lose. He makes arguments why his ground standard links to the times Q arguments as well. But first, these were new in the last speech. He should have made these arguments. He should make these arguments at NC. A lot of the arguments were new, but because the initial shell was presented to the AC, you have to reject these arguments. And secondly, I'm the only one talking about specifically the time it takes to make these arguments, so he doesn't link. But then go to his clash standard. Even if education is voter, he's not winning the education voter. He says we can have a debate about the both framework and substance layer, but you can extend my argument that we never go into in-depth argumentation. It's only superficial. But the only way debate is education is we can actually go into specifics about what is more valuable. And he's not doing any weighing on this issue, so you can be preferring my weighing that outside of this round. If education matters, it's not about broad level thinking, which moral theory is correct, but how we specifically on specific things. Either we learn the depth of things because we can learn about superficial things outside of the round only when we see how arguments actually interact within the round and go in depth, and then can we actually get education. Then go to the fairness arguments. So that's the reason why the education turn. Go to fairness. On his ground argument, You can extend my first argument. You can extend my turn that it's better for your ground because it allows you to choose which layer of the flow to engage in the first place. So you can always choose a higher quality ground and have 7 minutes to develop their offense. Even if there's a narrow stem, you can have 7 minutes to develop your arguments in the first place. So you're always going to be ahead on that debate. So it's always going to be better for you in terms of ground. You drop this argument. His second argument, you can extend my second argument. The status quo LD makes it impossible to affirm his arguments. I asked on a lot of things because the ACs are really conclusive, but this AC didn't have lots of spikes. It was a very straightforward debate. Then his second argument is I can read narrow standards exclude all of your arguments, but you can also cross-apply my argument. As long as you have 7 minutes to develop your framework, you're always going to be ahead on that debate. And so it's a 6 to 7 times queue, so you're always going to be ahead on the time queue advantage. So it's not beneficial for you. So it's very clear. Even if education is a voter, if he makes a reason why education matters, I'm the only one providing breadth versus depth reasons, and strength of link outweighs. I'm winning on fairness as well.
Okay. So good job, guys. Interesting discussion. I end up voting affirmative, and I think it's actually fairly straightforward why. I think that the biggest problem is that your theory arguments essentially come down to twofold. The first is the clash argument that says we both prep our own positions, so that means we should be able to go in on like each layers of those, or like we each prep our own positions. So that means that we should have the ability to engage on either level of those positions, because you'll be more prepared on one and he'll be more prepared on the other. The second argument is the ground standard, and I think this is where you get into quite a bit of trouble. The first time you read the ground argument, you explain it as you have to have the ability to layer the debate round, because he could read some sort of narrow standard that pigeonholes you into very few strategic options. scared by the time skew Wayne he does, and essentially extend this argument to be like, well, he'll read a narrow standard, which means that I can only go for framework or contention, which skews my time, and that analysis is very unclear. His explanation in the 2AR is, look, you can choose one, I don't care which. If I read a narrow standard, spend 7 minutes on framework. If I read a very inclusive standard, spend 7 minutes on the contention. That time skew analysis makes a lot more sense to me than you simply saying there's like the possibility of him reading a narrow standard means you have to make some sort of time trade-off. I think that shift in your explanation of the ground standard severely diminishes the how compelling that argument is. And I think more importantly, you're conceding, you're essentially silent on the strategy skew argument that says that the ability for you to have multiple preclusive layers makes the 1AR have to split their time. And then and then he draws an internal link of this argument to the clash analysis that basically says, look, the best way for us to clash is to say, look, let's just pick one layer of the debate and spend the entire debate on that. And I think those two layers of the theory debate, I think that your responses are drastically insufficient. You're sort of conceding that you're conceding that in the world of your counterinterpretation that we would be left in a very superficial debate round where you're essentially talking past each other, where like you read a bunch of framework responses, turns to the contention, and then all you're doing is sort of competing extensions from there. I don't think that argument's necessarily true. In fact, I am very partial, or not partial, but like ideologically sort of opposed to the interpretation that you're forwarding. Obviously, that's sort of irrelevant, and I don't really care. But I think that your responses just seem very sort of all over the place. That I don't really have a coherent response on those. Particularly, the particular area of concern is the way you decide to extend the ground standard in the next speech. So, the last negative speech.
Yeah.
So I think what it essentially comes down to for me is one is just a lack of responsiveness to the strategy skew arguments that he's making that talk about the way he has to split up his time, so we should just have one layer rather than debating both framework and the contention. And then two is the way that there's just a lack of I don't want to call it offense, but there's a lack of sort of clarity on what the benefit of your standard is, or what is the detractor of his version of debate, because of the way that you sort of shift your extensions. And then on the clash argument and the way it links to education, I think his analysis is just much clearer here, that your explanation is very poor as to why you each prepping for your own case means that we should have both levels of the debate. It seems as if anything that his 2AR analysis about why that would just mean that we should focus in on say we're both ready, you're super ready on libertarianism, he's super ready on Kant, then or the Ripstein stuff, then we should just hedge those two against each other rather than getting into spreading the debate out much more and ending up having it be very superficial. So yeah, I think that covers most of it. I don't really get into the strength of link stuff between education and fairness. It seems that he is very, very far ahead on fairness. So if what you're saying is correct, that they're both important, I should look towards strength of link. Even if I think you're winning a little bit of the clash argument, which I'm not 100% sure you are, I would feel comfortable voting on the fairness arguments from the strategy school.
Makes sense. Thanks. He just go speaks.
Yeah, 29 and 28-7.
Alright, let's get this moving real quick. I want to go back to the hotel. I want to sleep.
Yes, please.
Do you sit here or I don't know. Why debating in here? I think it made more sense if you sat on either end of this table.
Hey, Ash, do you have my contract?
It feels kind of awkward, but I mean, you do what you want to do.
Can you do
I
this
don't
stuff?
care.
Yeah.
Whichever one you want to sit.
If you wanna come
it just
watch.
feels more natural.
Nah,
I know.
I just
Sure.
want to get my contract.
Can I use your stand? Yeah.
Sure.
All right. I don't usually use it, but I want to sit. Oh.
Who's what side?
What?
Who's what side? Salim just sort of put it in here.
Oh yeah, he wants to record
Yeah.
both.
Rounds recorded. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's what's going on. Do you have a flash drive?
I don't.
I have mine, but it's kind of unreliable, so.
We could just email if like it gets too much of a
I
pain.
don't know. Yeah. Do you want to take prep time for flashing? Is that alright?
That
So
would be preferred.
prep time ends when flash drive leaves your computer?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
I'll make sure all my disk ads get uploaded.
You're like 10 diff ads. Maybe 8. You're sure to bust out. Ready to have a strong utility.
Of course.
Ash is like, no.
That's totally what's gonna happen right now.
I predicted it, dude. That's why I put no framework and just lots of advantages.
That's all we gotta do. So it appears like your speech doc is like it says file.
Yeah, it's the file.
No, I mean it says like file. It like I don't think this is a Word document.
You try opening it?
I don't know.
Oh, that's weird.
Let's try Word.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Alright.
that's odd. Oh, maybe because you have an updated verbatim and I don't.
Oh, yeah. Verbatim 5, dude. Changed my life.
I don't even know which one I'm using anymore.
Oh.
It's just so wonderful though. Thank you for introducing it.
Yeah, dude. Public service.